the worst thing that could happen? You do okay? Okay. What's the worst thing that could happen to a follower of Jesus? The world says, you're going to die. Okay? What does Paul say about that? To die is gain, right? To die is to be with Jesus. So if death is the worst thing, I mean, I'll be honest. The idea of death, the process of death, is kind of a little bit scary for me because I don't know if it's going to be quick. I don't know if it's going to be a long, lingering thing. It's just that process. But when you compare that process to the eternity with Christ, it's kind of like, right? So yeah, maybe a little bit of apprehension, but that's okay. We all have apprehension about dying. But what's the worst thing after that for the follower of Jesus? Now, the worst thing for if you're not a follower of Jesus is eternity in darkness without the light of God. That to me is scary. That to me frightens me. So Jesus asked if they were more than willing to suffer and die as he would. And if you're a true follower of Christ, I don't think anybody in this room or anybody in the life feed is going to go into a mission field that's going to require you to put your life on the line physically. But to suffer and die mean, in one context would be, are you willing to suffer and swallow a little bit of your pride to share the gospel? Are you willing to suffer a little bit of your pride to share the gospel with someone who you wouldn't normally hang out with? You know, are you willing to, for example, for the young kids, are you willing to suffer the idea of that you're going to have to share the gospel with someone who's not a cool kid at school, for example? Right? And then the other cool kids are going to be looking at you and going, why are you hanging out with them? Right? So you're willing to suffer and die to yourself as Jesus did. The hesitating answer of James and John probably indicates that they still didn't understand what was involved in being a disciple. Which again goes back to what we've been studying in our Friday night Bible studies. What does it mean to be a true disciple of Jesus? In view of their expectation of a glorious kingdom, that's in verse 37, it is surprising that they would so readily have agreed to suffer. Like, yeah, we'll go through the cross too. They probably didn't get it. This is a hard question that Jesus is asking. Remember when he says, count the cost. You want to be my disciple, count the cost. You're going to be ridiculed. It's going to be uncomfortable. Some people are not going to like you. Some people may have it out for you physically. But are you willing to go through all of that? Are you willing to suffer for the sake of Christ? And he didn't want a flash answer. But he's asking you to really think about this. Because if you're a true disciple of Christ, there's going to be some really rough stuff you're going to have to go through. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be challenging. But in the end, Jesus is always there. And that's the promise that he gives us. And the idea then becomes, the question for us is the suffering going to be worth it? Is this going to be worth it? And I got to tell you, some of the stuff that I've gone through, from some of the stuff I've heard you guys have shared with me, what you've gone through, yes, it is worth it. Yes, because you overcome your fears. You overcome, your prejudices. You overcome, if you're an introvert, you overcome that. Right? Yes, it's worth it. You start to see the world in the same way that God does. Yeah, you see all the things that make your heart heavy, but you also see the things that we see God in it, and it's like, oh my goodness, God, you did that? And it's worth it. Because how can you understand that the only throne Jesus will mount is a wooden one? meaning that cross. That the only crown he's going to receive on this side of heaven at that time is a crown of thorns. And those that will be on his right and his left are going to be crucified thieves. The baptism they are offered is to be buried and rise again with Christ. The cup he offers is one of suffering. Here we have the most direct link between baptism, discipleship, and suffering. The baptism. Are you all in on Jesus? Are you all in enough to follow him and call him Lord? Are you all in on him even with the suffering? Verse 41. When the 10 heard about this, they became indignant with James and John. Jesus called them together and said, You know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be a slave to all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. So the disciples are going looking at James and John and going, why are you asking to be in a place of privilege? And Jesus heard this and he says, guys, this is different. I'm telling you. Let's go. What does it say there? He used this entire incident to teach the necessity of humility and service, especially for Christian leaders. That idea of, okay, so two Fridays ago, we had the Bible study lesson on washing the feet, right? The idea of servanthood, the idea that God in the flesh would wash the dirty feet of his disciples. And the idea being that if the Lord would do that for his disciples, then what must the disciples do for other people? And Jesus is underscoring it, here. Even this is before the washing of the feet, but Jesus is underscoring it here. He said, look, listen, if you really want to be great in this side of heaven, if you want to be great in the Father's eyes, you got to serve. You serve other people. You become their slave. Right? I know that's a difficult thing, right? So today, the idea of being great, the idea of glory is to be in charge. Right? We see that in the world around us. We see that in our workplace. We probably see it in the school. Definitely see it in politics. Today, the description of an authoritarian way could be well extended beyond governmental officials and into some businesses and church leaders. Probably some place where you work. I know there's places where I work where I have to deal with that. And there's even sadly some church leaders who act that way. It's my way or the highway. You serve me, not me serve you. Ooh. Y'all, if I ever get to that mindset, well, look for the warning sign first, but if I ever get to that, feel free, just smack me one. I invite you. If I ever get to that point, you are free to smack me one and knock some sense back into me. By aspiring to greatness, the disciples were in danger of becoming like Gentile rulers. Again, so Jesus is saying, if you want to be all in on me, you can't be like the world. That's the basic point now. You want to be all in on Jesus, you cannot act like the world. You cannot be chasing power. You cannot be doing that.